All right, just as by way of an intro, I had put some stars here so you can see where you're going. You're going from the island of Haida Gwaii here. Then we're going to do the Faroe Islands, which is North Atlantic, and Iceland. They're all within like 50 to 60 degrees latitude. I am recovering from a cold, so I hope I can make it through talking. Some of you guys, when you think about islands, you think about the tropics, right? You want to go to an island with sandy beaches and snorkeling and all that kind of thing. But you probably don't think about most of those places you're going to go, you're going to see high rises and beach chairs next to each other as far as the eye can see, and people everywhere, and cruise boats, and it's annoying. But if you want to go someplace that's spiritual, someplace for your soul, you want to go to islands where there aren't hordes of tourists, and where the landscapes are just stunningly beautiful and otherworldly, and you can feel at peace. And so those are the kinds of islands I want to talk to you about, not about the tropical. Yeah, I've been to Tahiti, I've been to the Caribbean, but these islands are just amazing. And I would highly encourage you to go there before the tourists discover them. So the first island is the island of Haida Gwaii. Haida Gwaii is off the coast of, here we go, off the coast of British Columbia. Right here, it is part of Canada. Used to be called the Queen Charlotte Islands. Whoops, sorry, I'm getting used to this thing. This is the boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. This part right here is transformed, which means it's doing this, so it's quite a volcanic region right there. This is the continental shelf where it drops off like 4 miles, I think, right up next to Haida Gwaii. It's remnants of a crust that's been, because of plate convergence, pushed up into mountains, so it's quite mountainous. But as you'll see in my pictures, it's been 90 million years in the making, so it's quite worn. Here's the islands themselves. There are 2 main islands right here and 150 small islands. If you like to kayak, it is a kayaker's paradise. This part right here, the Haida people have become very vocal. They never signed a treaty with Canada, and they are pushing to control and have their island back. This is a national park here, all national park. There are no roads. There's no way in other than by plane or boat, float plane. And so you can see all these other areas are all under conservancy. They're all protected now by the massive logging industry, which is sitting over here in Canada eyeballing that property because of the vegetation on it. So we traveled from one end of the islands to the other when we were there. This is an airplane view, so you can see what glaciers have done to the mountains that have been pushed up. Over 90 million years, these islands, I'm sure mountains were much higher, have been worn. They're heavily forested. And you can see, we don't see a lot of sandy beaches here. It's very rocky. I put this photograph in not because it was a good photograph, but because it was one of the few we had to show that lumbering still takes place there. I guess some lumber companies have some access, but it's being curtailed. The Haida peoples are really working hard to protect their island because so much of it is old growth forest. This is down in Guayhanas, the beautiful islands it's called in Haida language. You can see tide pools. It's very rocky, very foggy. The climate is oceanic climate, so it's cool and damp all year round, and heavily forested with Sitka spruce and cedar. And I read this, and I'm repeating it to you. I think it must be true. It was in National Geographic. It has to be true, right? There are more biomass per square yard in Haida Gwaii than anywhere else in the world. Now, I find that hard to believe, but when you see these pictures of the forest, you can begin to believe that that's true. You walk on this forest, and it's like the best carpet you've ever walked on. It's so squishy and so mossy and so verdant, just so green. Beautiful that I couldn't help but just lay down and take it all in. So this is what the forests look like. It's definitely that temperate rainforest. There's evidence of peoples that have been on this island. They figure because that was part of the pathway that you showed, the migratory pathway when the land was available for the people to cross from Asia, that peoples were walking on this land 16,000 years ago. And it's been occupied, they figure, 12,000, 13,000 years. There have been indigenous people, the Haida, people living here. This is an old canoe, probably left there from around the time that smallpox decimated 95% of the peoples on the island. So you can see some huge cedar trees, the old growth cedar. Cedar is the trees that are used most for Haida art and for the Haida building. There is evidence of volcanism. It's hard to see. I couldn't find a better picture. We probably have one, Brock, but this is a volcanic plug right here. So there's evidence of volcanism on the island as well. It's called Toe Hill, and it's really, really tall, and it's just this columnar basalt that sticks up right next to the northern part of Haida Gwaii. This is what the beaches look like. There is sand in the beaches, but a lot of basalt. A lot of shipwrecks. This is an old logging ship you can hike to see. And I put this picture on here because this is a very mountainous island, but the mountains are all heavily forested, and this was a hiking trail that took us, no lie, from probably 8 in the morning till 8 at night, going up this mountain several thousand feet. And this is the path. And you have ropes to hang on to, and you're basically going vertical to get up this mountain. And we passed a couple coming down. It was a mom with a backpack and some kids, as we're sweating and struggling and saying, "Are we almost there?" "Oh, you're about halfway." We almost turned around and went back. This is the view from the top of Sleeping Beauty Mountain. So you can see the mountainous, especially the region in the west of Haida Gwaii is all mountainous. That's looking toward that west. And here's a little, probably snowmelt lake that's at the top of Sleeping Beauty Mountain. Actually, the peak of the mountain would be this way and up still. Brock was up it and taking the picture down at me. This is the southern part of the island where if you like to kayak, this is just heaven for kayakers. There are no campsites. You camp wherever you want. You take everything out with you. Even if you stay there, you don't bring in or leave anything there. Even you mess up your campsite when you're done. Don't leave a little fire pit or anything. There's evidence of old whaling village that was here, but in the 60s, a bunch of hippies bought some of this land, which is now land that's owned by the government for a national park. They didn't kick them off. There's 3 left of these old hippies, and they salvaged stuff that washed up on the shore, and they built 3 little guest houses that you can stay in. We stayed with an old German guy named Gutz, and this is our cabin. There was a little outhouse next door. It had a beautiful view. Wasn't bad. There was another shower room off to the other side where they heated the water with firewood, and you could actually take a shower. This is our cabin. And this is Gutz and his helper. And if we wanted food, they'd go out in the Zodiac with a line hooked onto a board, and they would put it down a couple of 100 feet, jerk a couple times, and up they would come with dinner. So they live off the land. They have big gardens there. They grow everything. You can whale watch while you're there. Most of the creatures that are there are in the sea or in the air. In fact, the Haida people believed the orca were the masters of the sea, and the eagle of the air, and the bear of the forest. We went orca watching one day with Gutz. This is some pictures of Brock photographing orcas, which spent probably, Brock, what was it, 2 hours with us?
About 2 hours.
You know, 2 hours with this pod of orca. They were teaching their young how to catch seals and kill them and eat them. And they were just tossing this poor little seal around until he died. I didn't put a gory picture in. A lot of raptors, seabirds, stellar sea lions live all around the coast, and they're very curious. They'll pop up and come after you when you're in the boat. And my favorite, puffins. This is the Pacific tufted puffin. The Atlantic ones look very different, so pay attention to this for the next puffin pictures, because he looks different. Tidal pools are just full of colorful life forms. These are bat stars, which are now, for some reason, with global warming, dying out, and they don't know why. This picture was taken above water. That's why it looks a little funny. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about the indigenous peoples, because this is probably one of the most interesting things about the island. I took this off the internet. I didn't take this. This is from the 1800s, prior to the decimation of 95% or more of the peoples on Haida Gwaii. They came across, I said, about 12,000 years ago from Asia. And they have a unique language, though. Nobody can seem to figure out where this language came from. They were highly skilled in making things out of cedar. So these totem poles tell the family stories. The houses that they made were unlike anything that you think of Indians or Native peoples in America. On the mainland, they made things out of cedar, these big, huge houses out of cedar. And that was even before they had anything but stone tools. They made huge canoes. They were seafaring people. They figured they traded as far as Russia. I took this picture also from the web, just so that you can see the Haida people are becoming, there's a resurgence in the interest of their culture. And this is a wedding ceremony in the canoes with some of the traditional dress. You can kind of see there's cultural centers there. You can really immerse yourself in Haida culture. We took these pictures of the totems that they are now starting to recarve. When the people from outside came to Haida, they tried to Christianize them. They told them that these were evil, that they were worshiping these things, and they took them. They cut them down and took them to museums all over the world. They stole all their totems, including some I'll talk to you about in a minute where they used for burial. They took their children away to force them into assimilation. They sent them to schools halfway across the country of Canada. They banned their potlatches. You know what a potlatch is? No? Okay. The Indians of the West Coast, in order to redistribute their wealth, if you want to get status, you give away all your wealth. And then you gain status. And every time you do that, then if you accumulate more wealth, you give it away in another ceremony. This way you rise in the culture. And it was a way of making things even. The Canadians banned that and said you can't do that anymore. So the Haida peoples have now really tried to recapture. This is an old totem, they're redoing it. You can see one of their huge canoes. They had ocean-going canoes that would hold up to 60 people in their trading, and they were also a warring people. Here's just some pictures of these are indigenous Haida people that are beginning to do their artwork again and protecting their island and keeping their culture, writing their language, which had never been done before. A picture of a canoe. And this is very interesting. These are mortuary poles. When someone important would die, they would put their body in a box in a special little house out behind the house that they lived in, and that body would stay there while the family had a potlatch, while they carved a mortuary pole, which is short and it's an upside down tree. You see it's wider at the top. And then the body would go in a box in the top of that pole and be affixed in there. And when the pole slowly rotted and it fell to the ground, the spirit would be released to the spirit world, which was all around us. And you can feel that spiritual sense when you are in this place. It's called Skangway, is one of the villages which is now protected by the Haida watchmen. All the Haida take turns. Like if you were a Haida kid today, you would take a turn in the summer being a watchman at these sacred sites throughout the islands, so that when tourists come to see them, a Haida watchman is with you the whole time, and you are respectful of the ruins there. You can see some of the poles of the houses here that have fallen down. This whole village was decimated by smallpox. Everybody died of smallpox here. And people were coming and stealing these mortuary poles with bodies in them, and they take the bodies. They're in museums around the country, around the world, actually. Well, now they're protecting what's left of their poles, but they're not keeping them upright. If they fall down and rot, that's important to their culture. So that's just a little bit. There's another little bit of picture about Skangway, and the mortuary poles and the ruins of one of the Haida villages. So, anybody sound interested in going there? So we'll do Faroe Islands next. This wasn't even on our radar when we started to plan trips, island trips. It just so happened that the airlines landed there when we were going to Iceland. We've been to Iceland twice. And so, I looked into it. This sounds like a wonderful place to go. So here's the Faroe Islands. It was part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which now runs through Iceland. So that's the divergent boundary where new crust is being created. This 50 million years ago was over here, so to speak. It's when the Atlantic was being created. So it's sort of a remnant because it's sinking back into the sea. And one of the things that Amber didn't talk about, here's the Mid-Atlantic Ridge that goes through Iceland. There is a plume or a hot spot like the one that forms Hawaii, but it's also on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And that plume was underneath the Faroe Islands once upon a time. And when that plume is pushing up and volcanically erupting, it sort of lifts the land, and the land begins to subside. So the Faroe Islands are sinking, sort of. That basalt that is sinking back into the ocean. And it's also been heavily sculpted by glaciers. So that you can see this, keep this in your head for Iceland as well. Because what's forming Iceland right now, rifting it apart but also forming new land, was what formed the Faroe Islands. This is what they look like today. And you can see the glaciers have just had their way with the land. They've carved deep fjords, and these are very deep with high seawalls. People live, and it's not heavily populated at all. People live in mostly small villages. This is the largest city, Tórshavn. Good roads there, you can get around easily, but not many people, especially in the interior, so great hiking. This is what the land looks like. It is so green. Again, that very humid, moist, wet land, mostly grass. No trees grow here at all. It's too windy, and there's too much salt in the air to support tree life. So you won't find trees anywhere unless somebody's brought one and stuck it in their backyard. There are no trees naturally. Lots of grasses, lots of mosses, lots of fog, and rounded, glacially carved land, and lots of little waterfalls. So you can see it's like a lot of rubble on this island. It's left over from glaciation. It's great to hike here, but you have to hike, if you want to go more than just a few hours, with rain gear and the ability to just plop yourself down, cover yourself up, and wait it out when the fog moves in, because you don't want to fall off, anything like that. And we ran into a couple of young ladies who were hiking, and they said, we're prepared, we have food. If fog rolls in, we will just sit down and sit there until the fog goes away, just to be on the safe side. You don't want to plunge down anything like these. But this is what the land looks like. There isn't a lot of habitation. You'll see a few little farms around, but, and you can see that the layers of volcanic basalt that was laid down over time, over a series of eruptions. So a lot of times when you see this, you can see those layers. Little villages right along the coast. Fishing has been the most important. The Faroe Islands means sheep island, by the way. Yes?
Okay, I was just about to ask what kind of animals were found on the island.
None. Man has brought everything there. Whereas, I forgot to say about Haida Gwaii. I just got to add this about Haida Gwaii. It's important. Haida Gwaii was a refugio for the animals and plants that were wiped out during the last glaciation on the mainland. It never glaciated, the very last one on Haida Gwaii. So there's thousands of kinds of subspecies of plants and animals there that don't exist anywhere else because they were left over on Haida Gwaii. Whereas this was heavily glaciated all the way through all the glaciations. People are always been dependent on fishing, but with the advent of all these industrial fishing boats, the big ones that come from China and Japan and everywhere, they've wiped out most of the fish. Cod, especially, if you've ever read the book Cod, great book, little skinny book about what the countries that were made or broken by the cod industry over history. Very interesting book. But these little villages often have access to the sea, but not necessarily. You see that it looks like they're growing stuff here. It's mostly grasses for their sheep. I think they may also grow a little bit of barley. You can't really see that. A lot of the houses are painted black. If you go to Norway, you'll see the same thing. Black houses with grass roofs. Those are the older homes. And then you can see the layers left over from the volcanic accumulation of these islands. That's probably one of the bigger waterfalls on the island. You can see the layering again. Some of the tallest cliffs in the world are here. And there's other places in the world with just as tall, but some of the tallest cliffs in the world are here. So you can see it's pretty difficult to go from island to island. They've connected these islands by undersea tunnels. You drive under the water in undersea tunnels to get to island to island. Or if you live on the island, you can't just drop down and get in your boat in a lot of these places. So here again, sea cliffs, mostly occupied by birds, but the people who have lived there for a little over 1,000 years, they were settled by Irish monks and Vikings over 1,000 years ago. And again, remember Haida Gwaii was like 12,000, 14,000 years ago. They would crawl up these cliffs to get bird eggs. Not me, I wouldn't do that. See this little bit of white right here? Probably a sheep. We would look at the edge of these cliffs and we'd see these sheep and wonder, how in the world did they get there and how are they getting back? A lot of the Faroe Islands mythology, although they believe it, is shared with Iceland. The language is similar to Icelandic. They believe in trolls and elves and hidden people. These were probably trolls that partied too late at night and to the morning and were turned to stone. They now rely on some of the best farmed salmon in the world. It is more sustainable than any other farmed salmon, so I would never recommend you buy any farmed salmon. But if you can get it from the Faroe Islands, and I could go into all the details of how they do it, it's much more sustainable. So these are fish farms that they move around in between all these areas, these deep fjords, they have fish farms. And the people who used to go out to sea now go work on the fish farm. There is more people involved in fish farming than there are sheep nowadays. Probably another troll out there. This is Gassadalur, which is the iconic picture of Faroe Islands. And this little village had no way to get anywhere else on the island. If you wanted to get to a hospital, if somebody died and you needed to be buried, you couldn't just go down the cliff face and get in a boat. There is no harbor there. They had to hike across this mountain. So there is a hiking trail that goes across the mountain, and there's places where they would stop and set the coffin down if they were carrying a coffin over the mountain. There is a place where a child died en route to the hospital not that many years ago, and they had to bring the priest quickly to baptize the baby because they're Lutheran, and they believed the baby needed to be baptized before she died. In 2004, they blasted a tunnel through that mountain. 2004, not that long ago. Now the people in this now we could go there to take pictures, and people in this little hamlet have a way to the other side for death, hospital, whatever, groceries, whatever you need. So, but I'm just going to go back a second. I think that is one of the most beautiful places. And honestly, that's not a Brock picture. That's an Ann picture with her cell phone. Yes?
Did you talk to a lot of the local people?
Yes. Yes. In fact, we were invited into the home of one of the people. And so we got some information about the fishing and how things have changed for the elderly gentlemen in the home. And they all speak Faroese, which is very similar to Icelandic, but they're learning English. And they're so friendly and so welcoming. It's a wonderful, wonderful people.
I was just curious whether, like, are they content just living on that
Yes.
island? Like, they're very happy with it?
Yeah, even the young people, they are. If you go online, you can find videos of life in the Faroe Islands, and it's just beautiful. I think they realize that the rest of the world is kind of going to, excuse me, hell in a handbasket. This is a little oasis, a beautiful oasis on the planet where it is really pretty untouched by all this mess. Oh, it seems to me it's about like the size of the city, or maybe Tórshavn is the size of the city of Grand Haven. So not too many, and most of the people live in like Tórshavn. So a couple 100,000 maybe overall on the islands, not many. A lot of the roads are one-lane roads, and with pull-offs to the side, and sheep have the right-of-way, and if you hit a sheep, you have to report it to the police. Sheep have the right-of-way. This is Tórshavn, the capital city, so you can see the Danish influence and the Lutheran influence of the church. But the government buildings, the old government buildings are, and I wrote this down, I think from 1200. They're really old. They've been there a long, long time, and you can go to the old city. And you see in the older buildings, they all have grass roofs. Again, fish farming in one of the smaller, probably a little larger villages. Evidence of Lutheranism, and they were Catholic only for a very short time with those Irish monks. It went Lutheran probably about 1200. This is one of the hotels we stayed in. You can see that they try to capture the essence of the island even in their hotels. You look out your window and you saw grass. Another iconic picture from there. The people actually live here. I think there's 12 people that live in this area, little village. You can rent some of these cabins to stay in if you'd like. It's on a little lagoon off the ocean, which fills up as the tide comes and goes. And again, another kind of iconic village from the Faroe Islands.
So it's part of Iceland?
Well, Iceland also, with Faroe Islands, was controlled by Denmark. Denmark and Norway fought over it for a long time. Iceland is completely separate now. The Faroe Islands has their own government and mostly control themselves, but they are affiliated, and I never read a word that actually describes it. Excuse me. I put this in here because the guy is a weed whacker and he's cleaning his roof. But you can also see these are probably 1,000-year-old sheep fences. So this is just piles of rocks. And also hiking trails. You can hike back up in there, great hike. This is on the island of Meechness. Absolutely not spelled like it sounds. You get there by ferry because they actually have a way you can go up a steep ramp in order to get onto the island. And I also threw this in here just so you could see that if you don't take a ferry from one island to the other, you go through a tunnel. And you see that that's one lane, and there's truck traffic, and there's other cars, and they're going through their pretty good speed. You have to judge by the headlights. Do I have time to make it to the next pull-off, or better I pull off here? There's pull-offs all along there. And there's a sign outside the tunnel that says, if you're coming in this side, you're the one who pulls over. And there'll be a sign on the other end that says, you don't have to pull over, just keep on going. So you just, and Brock would scare the dickens out of me. Brock, quick, no, pull over on this one. Don't try to get to the next one. So, and sometimes you'll get to the middle of a tunnel, and it'll go this way or this way, there's signs. It's not like just one tunnel from the island. You can go to different parts of the island in these tunnels. And this is basalt. You know, that must have been some blasting that went on. There is a Faroese sheep that, if I go back to my notes, I'll try to remember. I think they've been on the island like 1,000 years. And so they are their own subspecies. And they, you know, local people make wool and things out of them. You can buy Faroese blankets and Faroese sweaters and stuff. But they're their own little sheep. Here's a nicer picture, a close-up of a ram. They also have an unusual little horse or pony. They're very small. They almost were eradicated and went extinct because, again, these have been here 1,000 years. They are their own subspecies, or I'm not sure you call it a subspecies. It's like a breed, their own breed. They were sold for pit ponies during the coal mining days in England, down to 5 or 6 horses left, and that's it. And they don't let it any more on, so they bred those horses, and they've reestablished this small, little, friendly, nice, hard-working pony called the Faroese pony. This is the island of Meechness again, sea cliffs with fabulous colonies of gannets, which I was afraid to get to because you had to go down the side of the mountain. But puffins are everywhere, and I just love puffins. So the last pictures here are on the island of Meechness with puffins catching capelin. Now see how they're different from the Pacific puffins? They don't have that tuft. It's my last puffin picture. Don't you love those puffins? Okay, next one. All right, Iceland. Now, again, location, just so that you see where it is. But I want you to see, this is the mid-Atlantic ridge that goes right through Iceland. So Iceland is tearing apart. It's rifting. In addition to that, it's sitting on top of a plume, like Hawaii is a plume, where that mantle is coming up. And so it's highly volcanic, very active, a lot of all kinds of earth-moving activity going on, as well as the glaciers which cover the volcanoes adding to the mix. So I don't know if you remember the volcano that erupted and screwed up airline traffic, Eyjafjallajökull. I attempt Icelandic, I'm no good at it. It was right down here. We were hiking right next to that, just a matter of months before it actually erupted. We also hiked by this one right here, Ashka, which is erupting, but we didn't get as far south as where the eruption was taking place. So you can see lots of activity here and land being created at 2 to 3 centimeters per year. I put this in here, I stole this off the web because we didn't have a drone at the time to take a picture from in the air. That is the dividing line between the Eurasian plate and the North American plate. And you can walk right down the middle of it. And that's splitting apart 2 to 3 centimeters a year. This is just a map. If you decide to go there, and again, of all the 3 islands, you can still go there at a time when you miss the tourists, but tourists are coming to Iceland. It's been discovered. And so you have to kind of plan your trip to make sure you don't hit it when all the tour boats come in up here and unload, disgorge millions of people. You can do the ring road, and then including the West Fjords, or if you are really adventuresome and don't mind driving in really tough conditions, you can rent one of their special 4x4s and go into the interior where no one lives, but you've got to be willing to cross rivers that are fast-flowing rivers. You've got to be willing to drive over roads that don't look like roads. And then if you have a flat tire, you have to know what to do because there's no place around to fix the flat tire. I can tell you that story. Yeah, no AAA out there, no. I also threw in Ayafalta picture erupting. This isn't our picture either. But I want you to see, they don't erupt like a nice, pretty Mount Fuji volcano. The earth cracks open and out it comes, and with a vengeance. So there's been times when a great many people in Iceland have been wiped out with these eruptions because there's so much volcanic activity going on. There are almost no beaches that look like a beach you'd recognize. This is one of them. This is called the Red Sand Beach. It's an organic sand beach made of crushed shells. Most of the beaches in Iceland look like this. It's volcanic, pulverized basalt, which is glacially outwashed. It's been deposited there by some huge event when a volcano erupted under a glacier and then was trapped, and all of a sudden, whoosh, all it comes and kills everybody in its path and leaves this big beach. This is one of the largest beaches, black sand beaches in the world. And they take you out on a vehicle because it's probably not a good idea to walk there. Again, when the fog moves in and the wind picks up, you could be in some serious trouble on a beach like that because it's like glass. You know, you just, when that wind picks up, you're being pulverized with little bits of glass from that black sand. This is just overlooking that same beach. Oh, and you can see mountains and glaciers in the distance. Everywhere you look, mountains and glaciers. This is very rugged. Remember the Faroe Islands, will eventually look like the Faroe Islands. The Faroe Islands used to look like this. Now, Iceland, which is still forming, is much more rugged. This is a fjord, just to give you the idea of fjords that are also carved. There's the East Fjords and the West Fjords on the northern part of Iceland. Some of the biggest waterfalls in the world are on Iceland. If you see them looking gray, that's called rock flour. That's just sediment that's born from this glaciers, which are very rapidly melting, and so these are huge waterfalls. This looks like the Grand Canyon, and honestly, you can't even see people. They're weeny teeny down there. That's not a tiny waterfall. It's huge. That was an event where massive amounts of water were released from an eruption and a melt, and carved that canyon down to. This is a falls called Dettifoss. This is also Dettifoss. That's me standing next to it to give you an idea of the power of that waterfall and the amount of water that's coming off of those glaciers. This is coming off Vatna, which is the largest glacier on the island. This is Gullfoss, another. Nowadays, because tourists are all of a sudden coming like mad to Iceland, they've got it roped off up there, and you can't get. These pictures were taken when we were there 10 years ago. So their picture quality isn't quite as good, but you can see again, there are multiple layers to this falls. Another one in the north, this is just a tiny piece of a multi-layer falls. Jandi, I think, falls. All through the island, there's hotspots. There's fumaroles and vents and heated water and hot streams flowing out. It's all this geologically, come on, help me out with words here. Geothermal, that's what I want to say. Geothermal areas. And this one in particular, they have actually put walkways down, but there's an awful lot of them. There's no walkways. If you live in Iceland and you want heat, you drill a borehole. You got heat. You want hot water? You drill a borehole. You got hot water. Almost all of the island's electricity is coming from geothermal as well. So this is just a couple of areas that we came upon. This is Mount Krafla in the north, one of the largest geothermal plants in the world. I think they have 33 boreholes, and when they first started making this, not all that many years ago, they triggered an eruption, which lasted, 4 or 5 years, and they had to quit building until the eruption subsided. I guess they drilled too deep or something. But there's all kinds of boreholes around, and then they use them to run big turbines to make electricity. And you can drive through this very volcanic area, and this is just what the area looks like. It's venting all the time because it's right on the volcano Krafla. I didn't want to go to the Blue Lagoon. So you just have to ask at the farms that you stay at. And we did farm stays all the way around. We stayed at people's farmhouses. Do you have a hot pool? Oh yeah, just go follow that trail out there with your bathing suit and go jump in. So I tested the top surface of the water, felt perfect. I got in and just about fried my feet off. It was really hot. But this is what you can do. You don't have to pay the $100 to go to the Blue Lagoon that you see advertised for Iceland, which is man-made anyway. You can just find places like this all over the island. Just be careful, it's not too hot. This is another very geothermically, volcanically active area called Landmannalaugar. It's rhyolite mountains, which are colored, and this, for some reason, picture looks more colorful if you see it on a computer or something. They're all very highly colorful. You can see this a little bit more. There's a lot of basalt around there, and then those rhyolite cliffs. It's a great hiking place. In fact, what I didn't show you is this big campground there. People do come from miles around to camp. This is our pictures of the plate divergent area where you can walk between the two plates. It's a place called Thingvellir, which has the oldest history of the oldest parliament in the world. The oldest democracy was on Iceland, anywhere in the world. And the oldest parliament was right over by those lakes over there, and right along this divergent boundary between the North American plate and the Eurasian plate. Again, this is also, there aren't many trees on Iceland, but there are some trees in this divergent area. You can hike on glaciers there, and between Brockeni and the toe of the glacier over there is probably a mile, to give you an idea of how big that is. It doesn't look that big. We'd have to hike a mile to get there. And we'd been hiking on the toe of the glacier until we get to this part where you can't hike up that unless you're heavily equipped with things because it's so jagged and calving. So they give you crampons and they give you a guide and you hike your way up on it. But you see how much rubble there is? These glaciers are melting at an extremely fast rate. There's another glacier. There's something like 200 named glaciers on Iceland and other little ones as well. I put this in here because we drove to the edge of a glacier, and that dot right there is a bus that holds probably 50, 60 people. And it drives up on the glacier, and they've dug a hole and put in an elevator, and you can, for $300 or $400 a piece, wasn't it? Something insane like that, or maybe it was $200. You can go down in the glacier, and there's rooms carved down there, and you can see the beautiful blue ice and stuff. So, you know, after we didn't do it, we thought, well, maybe we should have just sprung for the bucks and done it, you know. I guess we were feeling at the end of the trip we'd spent a lot, so. If I ever go back, I think I would do it. If you go online, you can see pictures of what it looks like, yeah.
Was it really expensive to travel in Iceland?
You know, it's getting more expensive. The airline fares have gone way down, and they've been advertising. The infrastructure cannot keep up with all the people that are coming there. So if I was you and you went, and as a geologist, you got it. That's like the first place you should go. There's a place called Nordic Visitor who will really help you out. They rent you a car. You got a hotspot in the car. You've got a map. They make your reservations at your stays, and you're just do whatever between. And we stayed in farmhouses with people open their homes in the summertime, which I thought was really cool. This is the famous lake from Die Another Day. If you watch those movies, I never watched those movies, but I understand. The car chase scene took place actually on this lake. This is Jökulsárlón, which is a lake formed by the melting of the Vatna Glacier, and it's right next to the ocean, and so all kinds of chunks of ice from the glacier come floating down through this lagoon, and it's iconic, very famous. Yeah, James Bond. I couldn't think of the name of the guy. James Bond, and this is where they had that race on the ice. They've actually filmed it on this lake, and you can take a boat on the lake in the summertime. It's frozen in the winter. But you can see the glacier in the background. See, that's pieces of the Vatna Glacier all coming down here and then calving into this lagoon. That lagoon isn't that old because the glaciers are melting so fast. This is near Eyjafjallajökull, the one that erupted, and Mýrdalsjökull, which are two glaciers on either side, and this is an example of a glacial outwash plain where water is constantly melting and running off and bringing all kinds of that small glacial debris from the glaciers having ground their way, you know, down between the mountains. For you who are geologists, that's what's that called? Nobody knows. Hanging Valley, carved by a glacier again. You know what that one's called? A trough, or a U-shaped valley, carved by a glacier. I took those pictures deliberately for a friend of mine who teaches high school geology. This is Brock's favorite place, probably in the world. This little oasis in a sea of lava with moss growing on it. It's pretty deserty all around it, and here's this little oasis. You're looking down into it. You can see the people down in there. And it's green, and it's little miniature waterfalls, and if you were Icelandic, you believe in the hidden folk. You believe in elves and fairies, and this is one of the places they believe they live. This is called Gwyn. That word that I had up there is Gwyn. You can see there's like a little hole here. I could see there might be little elves living in there. And the plants look sort of hobbit-sized. You really think you're in little hobbit world when you're here. All 3 of these pictures are from that place because it's just so beautiful. And it's hard to find, so tourists don't go there yet. So there's like hardly ever anybody there. This is in the northern part in Mývatn where the trolls live. And you can see that trolls could live there, right? Very misty, very wet. It was formed over wetlands when a volcano erupted, covered the wetlands, heated the water. What does steam do? Blasted up all that lava and made all these formations that they believe that were trolls that were partying too late at night, early in the morning, and were frozen into rock. And you can hike through there. Yeah, tourists go there like crazy, but you can get away from them if you just hike more than 10 minutes. These are pseudo-cones. No lava ever came out of them. Steam came out of them because, again, this is in Mývatn where the wetlands were covered by lava. And again, another picture of Mývatn. This is Reykjavik, very modern city, quite small, actually, very doable. Nice place to stay when you get there, but I would certainly get out of Reykjavik and into the smaller towns. They're Lutheran, just like the Faroe Islands. And fishing is important there, but not so much anymore. There's huge aluminum smelters there because they have access to such cheap electricity and water. And so a lot of people work in the aluminum smelting industry. This is another one of the farm stays. In fact, I think that might be the same one that I was sitting in the field.
Are they mining the?
No, they bring all the materials there, and it pays to do that because they have such cheap electricity. Isn't that something? And so it's kind of toxic. If I was an Icelandic person, I would think I wouldn't want those smelty people in my property. The interior, nobody lives there. Exterior, you've got all around the outside, it's habitable. It doesn't get that cold, although I guess they had their biggest snow event they've ever had recently and blocked roads, and it was incredible. They don't usually get that much snow. It's mild. The interior is tundra, inhospitable, uninhabited, except by some park rangers in the summertime. You find lots of old volcanic cones. We hiked up this one, and the picture isn't good enough to see, you can see kids have gone all the way down into the middle of the cinder cone and taken the light-colored rocks and written their names in there. And that's the cone. So here's the path. You hike all the way up here, and then you can hike all the way around it. It's huge. This is right sort of on the edge. You can see there's population around here. This is what the roads look like, a good road in the interior. The bad roads, you can't even tell it's a road. And those streams right there are the ones you drive across, and they tell you, whatever you do, don't gun it. Don't go fast. So we're going across, and suddenly you realize your wheels aren't touching anymore, and you're drifting downstream. And Brock was driving, I would have wanted to hit the gas. No, you just keep going, and gradually your wheels get purchased, and you get off to the other side. And hopefully you're still where you don't have to go up over these. We ripped the bottom off of the car. We got a flat tire. Yes, you had a question?
Did you come across any mining operations or something?
No. Nobody's mining out there.
Where they were mining where the glaciers were?
Nope.
There's ruby deposits and gold and stuff?
No. As far as I know, they aren't mining there. That would be new to me. I didn't see any evidence. I've never even heard of it. Nobody's out there. I mean, it's just, except every once in a while, we're going to this volcano. Nobody's going to be out there. Who would drive this? We're having a heck of a time. We get there, and there's like 20 people there. Wow, what are all these people doing here? So this is by Mount Aska. This is one of the small calderas. That other one that's a lake is a big caldera. You can see they have hiking trails, and there's a few people out there, and you can hike in fierce, fierce cold winds up on the top of this volcano. And there's still snow, and this was in July. Again, this is what the interior looks like. Rugged, desolate, nothing growing, lots of rocks. And this was in that same area. We hiked up into this canyon. I wanted to do a little bit on the organisms that live there. The peoples are not so interesting, other than Icelandic language is really interesting, and their belief in the hidden folk. But it's alpine vegetation mostly, so I put that picture in there just because it's pretty and it's alpine vegetation. And see the little white dots? Brock's favorite plant is cotton grass. It has little cotton balls on the end of all the grasses. Cute. One of the most famous kinds of horses in the world are the Icelandic horses. They're kind of between a pony and a horse. They are kept pure. No horses can be brought onto the island. If an Icelandic horse leaves, it can never come back because they're afraid of diseases and they're afraid of spoiling the purity of this, I guess you can call it subspecies or breed of this kind of horse. This horse, have you heard of a trot, a canter, a gallop? Those are gaits, right? They're called a gait. This has a tolt. A tolt is a gait that only the Icelandic horse has. It's been developed by these horses running over lava rocks, and they're unshod, and you ride on it. Have you ever ridden a horse? If you're riding a horse that's trotting, you're doing this. You ride a tolt, and you're doing this. Just kind of swaying back and forth. It is so comfortable. So I didn't put pictures of us riding because my feet almost drag on the ground. It actually looked kind of funny. They're very friendly horses. And you don't give them an apple. Oh, here, I'll share my apple. And one of the farmers said, no, don't give them apple. They eat bread. Okay, give the horse some bread. And you see a rider way at the end there. They move them from one pasture to the other, and the horses just go along. You can go along the road, and they're all tolting. That's so fun to watch because it's a very unusual prancy gait. And all along the road, these horses are in a tolt. I do have a video of it somewhere. Come on. All right, there we go. There are sheep. There are more sheep than people, and you can buy lots of woolen things on Iceland. I do love Icelandic wool, although it's kind of rough. This is a gray seal. There are many sea creatures surrounding the islands of Iceland, so I had to throw a couple of those in. Migratory birds. This is a whimbrel. Has one of the longest migratory pathways of any bird. It breeds in the summer in Iceland and goes down to the south part of South America in the wintertime. It's called a whimbrel. I just thought that was kind of cool. Arctic tern, they spend the year there. There's lots of seabirds. This represents the seabirds. Hello. And have you ever seen those white pigeon-looking birds called ptarmigans? This is a summer ptarmigan. See his kind of white, little ruffly legs? He'll turn completely white in the wintertime. And I always wanted to see one white. But I guess we have to go in the winter. And I end with puffins, because we love puffins. Oh, go back. I love my puffin picture.